Welcome to the Everyday Comfort Podcast, where we help homeowners make smart decisions and save money, and guide contractors on building trust, growing their business, and delivering real value. Let's dive into the show.
Hey, I'm Anthony Mound, your host of Everyday Comfort, the podcast built to serve homeowners and home service contractors. Whether you're a contractor looking to grow your business or a homeowner hoping to avoid costly surprises, we dive into real stories, practical tips, and smart strategies to help you succeed and stay comfortable every day. This episode is brought to you by Trust One, your reliable plumbing and HVAC contractor in Quincy, Massachusetts. Our goal is to provide premium customer service that instills our customers with trust, confidence, and a unique experience. Trust One strives to be the most recommended heating, cooling, and plumbing company in the South Shore. To learn more about us and keep in touch, visit trustoneservices.com. So I have Chad here with Rise 25, who has done thousands of interviews with successful entrepreneurs and CEOs, and we have flipped the script. He'll be interviewing me today. Chad, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much, Anthony. It's great to talk to you. Great to be here. I appreciate you having me. Hey, looking forward to finding out a little bit more about you, about HVAC and plumbing, and about Trust One. Why don't you just start by telling me kind of about your background? What did you do leading up to being involved with Trust One?
Yeah, so I used to come down to from upstate New York originally. I used to visit Boston every summer because my dad lived here. I never knew what I wanted to do. I was like, oh, I kind of wanted to be a cop, and I'm like, maybe not. So I used to come down and work with my hands, and I found out that I love fixing things, right? So I ever since I was 14, I would come down, and then I eventually moved here when I turned 18. From there, I got in the apprenticeship program for plumbing, and then I learned plumbing and HVAC throughout the years of my career. So I worked with a few different companies, ranging from new construction, residential homes. I was in like big high rises for a little bit of time, doing all kinds of service, repair, installs, and then eventually I started my own business. We were originally Mound Mechanical, and then someone was like, "Hey, if you ever want to grow this business big and have a future with it, you don't want your last name on the name of the company." So we rebranded to Trust One Services, and then someone was like, "Services? Like, what do you guys do?" And I kept getting that question over and over and over again, and I'm like, "All right, like we got to do something here." So we kept Trust One, and now it's Trust One Heating, Cooling, and Plumbing. So you know exactly what we do. Our shirt says exactly what we do. So yeah, that's it's been about 5 years now. Trust One's 5 years old. Yeah, so that's kind of how I learned plumbing and stuff from my dad growing up, and then I learned like he did like a lot of sewer lines and plumbing, random plumbing stuff. So I learned from him, and then I took an apprenticeship program, learned from quite a few different people. So
You said originally you weren't sure what you wanted to do, but you wanted to work with your hands. What attracted you to plumbing? I mean, as any homeowner, especially a clueless homeowner like me, will tell you, it's a very valuable service. But what attracted you to it?
It's funny. It's one of those things you kind of look up. Like we always look up to our parents. As a kid, you like watch your parents, and you're like, you think they're superheroes, right? So I always watched them do plumbing, and so it was kind of like my easy way in. And so, but I love fixing things. I love like taking care of customers. I love solving problems and then seeing a result of something afterwards. So that's kind of how I fell into plumbing. I was never shy about hard work. Trust me, I'll do whatever. Like you needed me to carry cement blocks or do landscaping or fix a roof, like whatever. I did all that stuff too. I took carpentry in high school as well. So we like built a house and that's kind of how I learned I liked plumbing as well. Because I built a house in high school and I was like, you know what? It's not really my ideal, like what I wanted to do. So that's kind of, I really fell in love with plumbing and that type of scenario.
So how long have you been doing plumbing and HVAC?
Well, if you count on the books, 11 years. But if you consider being a kid, like I mean, at the age of like 5, I was like handing tools to my godparents and my dad
Hmm.
and stuff. So I've been around the trades my entire life. But really like working and coming down and doing things in the summer since I was like 14 years old.
When was the last time you were in a situation where you're like, I have not seen this one before?
I haven't really. A lot of the guys that work for us always call me with technical stuff, whether it's HVAC or plumbing. They'll call our service manager, and if if he can't answer it, then they're like, all right, well, Anthony's got to have the answer. And it's usually something really small, like this really cool trick that they're like, I didn't even think of that. I'm like, yep, I've been in a house at 9 o'clock at night and I've had to fix that issue before. And it's important to get the customer's hot water on or their heat or their air conditioning, whatever it is. You gotta figure it out, and make sure it works. So,
Nice.
yeah.
Very nice. So somebody calls you. So let's say, people decide they're going to place their trust in Trust One, and they're going to work with you. What are some common misconceptions off the top of your head that you can think of that homeowners tend to have when it comes to HVAC and plumbing?
Yeah, so we get the biggest common question we get is what's it going to cost? Like everybody wants to know what it's going to cost. And like, I mean, we're conditioned for that nowadays, right? We go online, we can buy something online. We got Amazons, we got all these online things. It's a little bit different with the trades. We have to, like, especially with a type of company that builds solutions to fix a permanent, like, make that thing that's broken permanent, so they don't have these issues anymore. And like, yeah, we could come out and do a band-aid fix, but then the customer's not going to be happy with us afterwards. So
Hmm.
we like to come out, evaluate the entire situation, and provide solutions for that problem. But if someone's very persistent, then we'll give like a range. But to really lead into that misconception is these repairs are not going to be $200 or $300. Some of these technicians that we pay are $50 an hour plus just for them to work. And that's not including all the other benefits and trucks and all the other expenses. So unfortunately, those repairs, are average like 500 and above, really depending on what it is.
So what are factors that can make make the cost of a project significantly increase?
Really, the labor and the time it takes to do that. The cost, the materials are one thing. I mean, those have skyrocketed over the years anyways, but the time it takes to do it right. We want to do everything right. We want to take care of the customer and make sure they don't have a problem where they don't have to call us back because they're having an issue a month later. We want to create permanent solutions, so that really takes time. Sometimes we have to open walls. Sometimes we have to like repipe whole drains. Sometimes we've done all kinds of stuff. So those are
Is there
really the
anything that you've seen that homeowners tend to do that always leads to the same problem? Like if everybody just stopped doing this, these problems wouldn't happen.
DIY.
Oh
They're
yeah.
trying to fix their own stuff. Uh, I mean, some of them can, especially plumbing. A lot more customers will try to fix their own plumbing instead of HVAC. Heating and air conditioning. So people would get a little more scared with electricity and gas, but
Mm.
fixing your own plumbing kind of makes it worse. We have to, fix that, and then not doing maintenance. Just letting something go. They hear a noise and they're like, "Yeah, I'm just gonna ignore that noise. Like, it's fine, it'll work." And then you know, it's one of those things. It's like if you're worried about a health issue and you don't go to the doctor, you're like, yeah, it'll just pass. It'll just pass. And you're like, no, you should probably go to the doctor and check that out.
Why do you think
So,
a homeowner might tend to hesitate to schedule maintenance?
because they know there's a bigger issue.
Mm. Don't
Either
want to hear
one,
bad news.
they don't want to spend money, which I understand. It's expensive to live out there, or they know there's a problem and they're like, oh, I don't want the bad news. Or a third reason is they might have had a bad experience with a contractor.
Mm.
Which is really unfortunate. They might have called someone and they're like, yeah, you know what? Like that guy was not, it didn't make me feel comfortable. He said some things I didn't like, or he made a mess of my house. That might be some reasons why they might not want to call somebody. Or time. They don't want to take time off of work. They don't have the time to get it fixed. So,
Are there any other besides cost? Are there any other kind of questions that constantly come up?
um, definitely cost. And then when can you get here? Of
Mm.
course, timing is very important to them, which it's important to us. We try to offer same day service, to really make that make that happen. And then worried about getting it fixed right the first time is another.
What is the biggest myth around parts versus labor and service bills? You talked about costs and the concern of that.
Yeah. Biggest myth is that you only have two things, parts and labor.
Mm.
In all reality, I really wish it was parts and labor because it'd make everything a lot easier. I know not everyone owns a business, not everyone thinks like a business owner, but when it comes to parts, we get a question of, hey, what's parts and labor breakdown? It's not, hey, this is the technician, this is what he costs, and then here's the cost of the part. There's, you know, the people that answer the phone. We have a team that answers the phone. We have a dispatcher that moves a board around like Tetris. Moves the customers around by priority, making sure
Hmm.
that the customer that has the highest priority of something that's broken or dangerous, make sure we get out there quicker, versus maybe a maintenance call. Not that we don't want to take care of every customer, but if you go to the ER and you go in and you have a cut on your finger, and then someone comes in with a bullet hole wound, well, we're going to take the bullet hole wound first. That's usually how it goes. So that it's triaging. It's the same thing with us. And then we have managers in the office. We have service managers. We have operations managers. We have install managers. We have all these managers that are there to make sure everything runs smoothly, make sure that there's no issues, and then if the customer's upset, that they have someone that they can call and they can talk to. And then there's the technicians that go out there and, we got to make sure that they're paid well. We got to make sure that they're happy. We got to make sure they have the best health insurance, the best benefits, so they can afford the bills and take care of their families. So all those things are important. And then you got the truck wraps, you got the trucks, you got all the parts in the trucks, you got the insurances, the workman's comp, you have the uniforms, you have the softwares. Like we have one of the best softwares there is out there. We can offer financing through it. We put all of our pictures, making sure you have digital invoices. We have all these, expenses that are overhead expenses, but they make the experience better for the customer. You know, that's all not broken down by parts and labor. So the overhead piece is about 40% of our cost. On a yearly basis, if you add up all the, revenue like that we do in a year, 40% goes to those overhead costs. Staff, softwares, all the other things. I could go on over and over about parts and labor and overhead.
Does like, let's say a problem that requires maybe more knowledge and expertise than maybe an entry level person might be able to handle. Does that influence cost at all?
No, our prices are the same, but we try not to have anybody like with the dispatcher and we're triaging calls. When
Hmm.
we're looking at the calls and if it looks like it's going to be a difficult call, we make sure we send a more experienced tech out to that call to make sure that they fix it right the first time. So it's, right tech, right job. So it's important that we make sure that happens. Like we have different levels of technicians. We have like a level one up to like a level five. So that level five tech can fix anything. We can the most difficult problems. So
So if a customer has a problem, they want to get maybe multiple estimates, maybe and they think that their top priority is to just go with the cheapest one. What are some other things that you'd say a customer should consider beyond that?
they should look at a lot of things. So the guarantees are important. We have a clean home guarantee. We have a workmanship guarantee that everyone who goes into your home works for us. We have, we background check and drug test all of our employees because it's very important that you know who's in your home. You know that they're going to be safe. They're not going to steal anything. They're not going to make a disaster of your home. We have a whole sheet of things that we give to like a sheet that we give to homeowners on like, new estimates for HVAC systems of questions to ask contractors. Like, hey, do we have the right insurance? Do we have the right workman's comp, the liability? What guarantees do you offer? Do you have warranties listed out on your estimates? Are all the estimates fully detailed and explaining what's actually done? Is the person coming into your home, are they knowledgeable about what's going on, what is getting put in? There's all these things that are added costs that make the price a little more expensive, but we're guaranteed to show up. Like we're guaranteed to fix it if there's an issue afterwards. I was the small contractor. That's how I started. I was a small guy in a truck, and I would go out and give quotes. I would go out and do the installs afterwards. And if there was a problem, I would, try my best to get out there at night. But it gets to a point where you're overwhelmed. That lowest price is a lowest price for a reason. It might be just them. They might not have an office team. And then when something breaks, if they get hurt or they get sick, they're not going to be able to come out in a timely manner to get that fixed. You have to wait for them or call someone else to fix it. So it's like, it's a little sting. You might save a couple bucks, getting that small contractor, and they might do a good job. They might do a fantastic job. Like, I'm not knocking them at all. They might do a great job, but if they get hurt or sick, they're not going to be able to service you. So we have enough team that if something were to happen, we can just take care of it. We can take care of the customers, and we're there if something were to happen. So
How how much of a home's energy would you say the energy cost comes from like heating or cooling or water heating?
most of it's going to come, honestly, like a huge part of your utility bills is heating and cooling. You
Hmm.
know, I think it's like 60% plus of like we always say, why don't you take care of the most expensive appliance in your home? It's the most expensive because of the cost of putting one in and also the cost to run it. So heating is a lot more expensive than, heating and cooling is a lot more expensive than the water heating, really depending on what you have. But
So, how important is it to pay attention to your air conditioner, especially if you live in a place where you might need one?
tune-ups and doing maintenance, that's definitely it should be done every year. The whole point of it, a lot of consumers they forget to do it and then they're calling in July and they're like, "My air conditioning's broken." And they're like, "What do you mean you can't come today?" And we're
Mhm.
like, "We have 1,000 calls today. Like we got 1,000 phone calls today, and we don't have enough technicians to run those calls. We'll try our absolute best to get out to you, but it's better to look at things before they're a problem. The same with your car. Like everyone is conditioned once they get to the certain mileage, they're like, "Hey, I need an oil change." And it's a reminder. So it's important to have a company that can remind you of doing maintenance, when to do maintenance, and then us actually coming out to do maintenance. We go through checklists and we clean the units and we make sure that all these things are in order before it comes to summer. And if there is a problem, we let you know about it. Okay, this is probably going to be a problem for you in the summertime. Or hey, your system's great, like it's going to work great. And we offer guarantees if it's not. For example, we come out and do maintenance before heating or cooling season, and there's an issue later on. Like we'll even credit back, some of the costs to have to do the checkup, just because, it's so important that you take care of it beforehand.
So our outdoor air conditioning unit is like right below our one of our windows, mainly where we're like are sitting there watching TV or whatever or something. And so
Yeah.
when it's on like at night, you can hear it pretty easily even with the window shut because we have the air
Yeah.
conditioning on. But you can hear it. Is there something that we should be concerned about regarding that noise?
It really depends on the age. You
Hmm.
know, every single unit you have has like a decibel rating of how loud it is.
Hmm.
So that's one thing you can research before purchasing. Like if you're going to buy a new air conditioner, you can get decibel ratings of like, and you can compare those decibel ratings to what that sound might be. Like there's some manufacturers that say their systems are as quiet as the human whisper, so you might not even know it's running.
Hmm.
So what I would say is if it's getting older, if it's an older unit, you might want to have it checked because usually what happens when these units get loud is either there's a fan on top outside. Sometimes it starts to lose its oil and then it
Hmm.
starts making loud cranking noises, like almost grinding. And then there's the same with the compressor in there. If it's low on refrigerant or if it doesn't have enough oil in the system, it starts making like loud noises and crackling and all kinds of different noises. And then usually when it starts making those noises, it starts to fail. You're like,
Hmm.
yep, that's when it's gonna break.
Is it do some maybe older units become less efficient? Like it takes it 6 hours to cool down by 2 degrees as opposed to a newer one.
Yeah, I mean, believe it or not, the older refrigerants, like it's a refrigerant called R22. It actually cooled better, believe it or not.
Hmm.
They're trying to save the environment, with the new refrigerants, which I definitely, respect that. And I'm on the same, like we're trying to do the same thing with these, these heat pumps and stuff. But it's over time, yeah, they do progressively get worse. They usually it's like, oh, you kind of almost forget, and then you almost deal with it. It's like one of those things over time.
Hmm.
You just like so used to it, and you're like, and then one day you're noticing it isn't working the way it used to, and you're like, I didn't even realize that over the years it got progressively worse. You
Mm.
know, it's like a knee, it's like a, an injury of some kind. You're like, at first it hurts and then it gets worse and worse and worse. And you're like, now that actually really hurts. That's
Yeah.
like the closest thing I can kind of compare it to.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Is it normal for maybe a modern system to run continuously?
Believe it or not, the newer systems are actually made to run longer.
Okay.
Like if you look at a high efficient system or a heat pump, they work like if, for example, the older systems, if you get in a car and you hit your gas pedal as hard as you could go and then let off and then like slam your brakes, and then go again. That's kind of how your old system runs. Everybody will set their temperature like thermostat, they'll turn it off and then turn it back on, turn it off, turn it back on. And that for older systems actually increases your electricity bills because the most of electricity that is being pulled from that unit is when it kicks on and kicks off. So the newer systems, they're designed so that if you set that thermostat to 70 degrees, leave it at 70 degrees. These
Okay.
units are better. They want to run. They want to run for longer periods of time. So
Okay.
you'll notice, a perfect example in my house, I have it's called a dual fuel system. So
Hmm.
it's electric and then it switches over to gas. So I leave my house at like the same temperature all the time and I leave it on. Because also another point with it too is it takes way longer to get up to that temperature or get down to that temperature.
Mm.
Especially when it's 80 degrees out. That thing's got to pull 8 degrees out of your house of, humidity or temperature out of that house. So if you leave it on, you go away, you're like, hey, I want it to 70, but then when I go away, I'll leave it to like 74. To get from 74 to 70 is a lot better to get than it's 80, 78 to 70,
Yeah.
especially when it's extremely hot outside.
So would it be less expensive just to keep it on, or some
Eh,
people might say I want to shut it off just to save money.
Depending on what piece of equipment you have, it probably won't save you money to shut it off.
Okay, interesting.
So.
What about heating? Our heat pump. How does heat pump heating differ from other methods?
Ooh, I'm really on the fence about this one because I have a love-hate relationship with heat pumps. I love heat pumps because they help the environment. They're good for the environment and they're efficient. These units are really they're high SEER, seasonal energy efficiency rating. So summertime they're fantastic. They save a lot of energy. They work really well. When you're in real cold climates, we're in Massachusetts here. If My rule of thumb for me is if you have a house that's 1,500 square feet or under and it's like reasonably insulated and your ductwork, if you have ductwork is insulated and sealed properly and designed correctly, the heat pump will work fantastic and you won't have insane electric bills. But if you have old ductwork, uninsulated house, and you have a bigger home and it's that system's not designed correctly, you're not going to be comfortable.
Mm.
Your electric bills are going to be 1,000, 1,500. We've seen $4,000 electric bills. Like it's absolutely insane. And so, as long as your ductwork's properly sized, properly designed, sealed, insulated, and then the unit itself is properly designed, then I think, heat pumps work fantastic. We've actually witnessed this. We try to make sure that we do the right thing by the customers and be transparent about heat pumps, when we're going to their homes.
Is it problematic or potentially problematic? Let's say a customer has a problem and you guys come out and look at it, and there's one thing that needs to be that's causing the problem. Is just replacing that one thing often just good enough, or could that cause more problems down the road?
The way that I see it is we don't just diagnose one thing.
Hmm.
We go through the entire system. We look at everything because one thing usually is caused by another.
Hmm.
It's like a domino effect. This part came to this part. There's usually something exterior that caused that problem. So we like to look through the entire system and then build solutions based on that problem. We'll do like three different options. And the bottom one would be just, hey, let's take care of that one little thing and then let the customer know. Let them choose what they want to do. Not pushy, not aggressive, not anything like that. Just build options, let them pick the solution that they want, and just be transparent about it. Hey, this is a band-aid fix. it'll probably get you through the summer, and let them decide.
Sure. Yeah, it's probably sounds like a good philosophy. Hey,
Yeah,
as we kind of wrap things up here,
sure.
this is your first podcast episode. What are you most looking forward to about having your new podcast and hosting it?
The number one thing is the customers, educating customers and making sure that they get a lot out of this podcast, and then helping, talking with my friends, like laughing and joking and really just influencing and helping people. So that's really the main, thought for this podcast.
Great. Well, it's I can tell it's going to be very valuable for anybody who owns a home. Hey, Anthony, it was great to talk to you today. Thanks so much for having me.
Awesome. Thank you.
So long, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Everyday Comfort Podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.